I want you to just picture the last time you saw a really heated argument online.
Oh, that won't take long.
No, maybe on Twitter or in some comment section, you have two people just screaming at each other, metaphorically, of course, maybe literally if caps lock is on, and they're both just absolutely convinced the other person is a complete idiot.
It's kind of the modern condition, isn't it? We are drowning in all this information, but, starving for actual understanding.
Right. And usually when you look closely, one person is speaking the language of, say, hard data, economics.
Look at the GDP, look at the quarterly stats.
Exactly. And the other person is speaking the language of morality or social justice or maybe even spiritual values. And they aren't just disagreeing. It feels like they're operating in completely different dimensions.
They're just talking past each other. It's the classic Tower of Babel scenario. We think we're debating reality, but we're mostly just debating our dictionaries.
That is exactly why I wanted to cover today's source material.
Oh, okay.
It's a text called Universal Grammar of the Perennial Truth. And I have to say, when I first picked this up, I thought it was going to be some, dry academic linguistics paper. But it is not that at all.
No, it's not.
It's more like a survival guide for this fragmented world we're all living in.
It really is. It's a pretty bold piece of writing because it tries to solve that exact Tower of Babel problem. I mean, the core premise here is that science, religion, philosophy, even AI, they aren't actually fighting a war.
Right.
They're just different dialects describing the exact same underlying structure.
Which is a huge claim. I mean, usually you put a diehard materialist scientist in a room with a theologian.
You expect sparks to fly.
You expect blood on the floor.
Yeah.
But this text is arguing that that whole conflict is just an illusion created by language.
Exactly. And so the mission for this deep dive isn't to tell you which worldview is right. It's to look at the source material and see if we can, find the shared truth that's hidden underneath all the symbols.
It's about getting past the packaging.
Moving from looking at the packaging to looking at the actual gift inside.
So let's start with that big concept right in the title, perennialism. Now, I'll be honest, before reading this, if you said perennial to me, I'd be thinking about flowers.
The ones that come back every spring.
Yeah. But the source defines this in a very specific way, doesn't it?
It does. In this context, perennialism is the recognition that there is a single timeless reality, a shade truth, that just recurs across all major human traditions.
So it's not just saying all religions are the same.
No, not in that superficial way. It's saying that if you dig past the dogma, past the rituals, even past the scientific jargon, you hit this kind of bedrock, a structure that is remarkably consistent.
And that's where the universal grammar metaphor comes in, which I think is the key to unlocking the whole thing.
It is. It's the central hook.
So if you think about language for a second, if I say a sentence in English and you say one in Japanese, sounds are totally different. The words, the alphabet. But underneath all of that, there is a structure. There's a subject, an object, an action. There's a grammar that makes communication possible in the first place.
Precisely. And the author is applying that exact linguistic concept to reality itself. The argument is that reality has a syntax. It has rules. And whether you're describing those rules using the vocabulary of, say, quantum mechanics or the vocabulary of Kabbalah, the grammar stays the same.
This was the light bulb moment for me. Because it just stops the game of who is right. We usually treat ideologies like sports teams. I want my team to win, which means your team has to lose.
It's a zero-sum game.
But this text says, wait a minute, what if we're all just describing the same mountain but from different sides?
It shifts the entire question. It goes from which map is correct to what is the territory they're all trying to map. And this is the hard part, to see that territory, you have to get past what it calls the packaging.
The packaging, yes.
Yeah.
This is where we all get tripped up. The source spends a lot of time on this, warning us about getting distracted by surface details.
It calls them the distractions of the dialect. Things like accents, labels, specific terminologies.
I was thinking about it like a birthday present. Imagine someone hands you a box wrapped in the ugliest neon orange paper you have ever seen. And you hate neon orange.
Okay.
So you just refuse to open the box. You just stand there arguing about how awful the paper is. But meanwhile, there's a gold watch inside.
That's a perfect analogy. We do that constantly. We judge the validity of an idea based on the aesthetic or the cultural wrapping it comes in.
And the source uses this one specific example I found really relatable.
Yeah.
The mispronounced word.
Yes. The text says, Imagine listening to a brilliant lecture, but the speaker mispronounces one specific word. Maybe they say nuclear instead of nuclear.
Or they use their instead of their in a comment online.
Right. And immediately half the audience just checks out.
Mm.
They fixate on that one error, the surface glitch, and they totally miss the profound point the speaker was making. The source calls this the argument trap. We use these surface flaws as an excuse to just dismiss the underlying structure.
It's intellectually lazy, isn't it? I mean, it's so much easier to correct someone's grammar than to actually engage with their idea.
It is.
But the source challenges us to do the hard work. It asks us to become translators.
And this is where the text gets really practical. It provides the sort of Rosetta Stone to help us translate between these different worldviews.
Okay, I want to spend some real time here because this is where the rubber meets the road. The source lines up these different disciplines: science, religion, psychology, AI, and shows how they map onto each other. Let's start with the classic rivalry, science versus religion.
The heavy hitters. So the source points out that science, particularly physics, is obsessed with fields and forces.
Fields and forces.
Gravity is a field. Electromagnetism is a force. You can't see them, but they shape absolutely everything.
Okay, and religion.
Religion talks about spirit and creation.
Now, hold on. I can just hear the psychic listener right now saying, come on. You can't equate a magnetic field with the Holy Spirit. One is math, the other is ghosts.
That's the packaging talking. Look at the function, not the label. Structurally, what is a field? It is an invisible, pervasive influence that dictates how matter behaves.
Right. It's the invisible cause.
It is the invisible causal layer of reality.
Okay, when you put it that way.
And structurally, what is spirit in most theology? It is the invisible, pervasive life force that animates the material world. The grammar is identical. Invisible cause leads to a visible effect.
Wow.
The scientist measures the effect and writes an equation. The theologian feels the effect and writes a prayer, but the structure they are both responding to is the same.
Okay, I'm with you. Let's try psychology.
Psychology just translates this into the internal world. It uses terms like drives and the self. A drive is just a force, but it's happening inside the psyche.
But here's something that really blew my hair back. The source brings in artificial intelligence. And this feels so different because, when we talk about ancient wisdom, we're not usually talking about large language models.
I think this is the most brilliant part of the source text. It argues that AI is rediscovering the perennial truth, but through pure math. The text uses the terms optimization and models.
Optimization. It sounds so cold, right? It sounds like corporate speak.
We need to optimize our workflow.
Yeah.
It does sound cold, but think about what optimization actually is. An AI model is trained to minimize something called loss, that's the technical term, the loss function, and maximize its fit. It's constantly searching this landscape of possibilities for the highest point, the optimal state.
So if I'm understanding the translation here, in a religious context, we might call that seeking righteousness.
They're walking the path, yes.
Yeah.
A saint trying to align their life with the will of God is, structurally, an agent trying to minimize their loss function, sin or error, and optimize their alignment with a perfect ideal.
That is wild. So sin is just high loss.
In the universal grammar.
Yes.
And redemption is convergence. It's when the model finally clicks into place and understands the pattern.
It's fascinating because it strips the morality out of it for a second and just lets you look at the mechanics.
Exactly.
We are all just systems trying to navigate a chaotic landscape to find a point of stability and truth. The monk does it with meditation. The AI does it with gradient descent.
And that's why we need to recognize that AI isn't some alien intelligence. It's a mirror. It is replicating the exact same search for truth that biological consciousness has been doing for millions of years. It's just using silicon instead of neurons.
So if we accept this premise that all these fields are just using different words for the same mechanics, what are those mechanics? The source promises us patterns. If we strip away the words God, gravity, and algorithm, what's actually left on the page?
The source lists several deep structures. These are the grammatical rules of reality. And the first one is relationality.
Relationality. You mean connection.
Meaning that things don't really exist. Only connections exist. In physics, a particle is defined entirely by how it interacts with other particles. In AI, a node in a neural network is totally meaningless on its own.
Right. It only has value based on its connection.
Its weights, its relationships to other nodes, yes.
And in religion.
Where two or three are gathered, The idea that the divine exists in the space between us, or the Sangha in Buddhism. The structure is this. Reality is a network, not a collection of isolated objects.
Okay, so that's the static structure. But what about movement? The source talks about a cycle, the logic of balance, tension, collapse, and renewal.
This is the heartbeat of the perennial truth, and you see it everywhere.
Let's break that down. Balance and tension.
Okay, so imagine a forest ecosystem. You have a balance between, say, the deer and the wolves. Everything's working, that's balance. But then, maybe the deer population grows too fast. Resources get scarce. That is tension. The system is stretched to its limit.
And if the tension gets too high?
Collapse. A forest fire, a plague, a massive die-off. In the moment, it looks like a tragedy. It looks like the end of the world.
But the grammar doesn't end with collapse.
No. The grammar requires renewal. The fire clears out all the old brush. The nutrients return to the soil. New seeds can finally sprout that couldn't grow before. The collapse was actually a necessary step for the renewal.
Okay, now apply that to economics.
It's the same grammar. You have a market boom, that's your balance or growth. Then you get a bubble. Housing prices go insane, that's the tension. Then the bubble bursts.
Collapse. A recession.
Right. Fortunes are lost. But out of that wreckage, new companies are born, new technologies emerge, and the whole economy restructures itself. That's renewal.
And just to push the translation one more step, apply it to our spiritual lives.
The dark night of the soul. You build up an ego, a sense of who you are. That's balance. Then life happens, a tragedy, a loss, some deep confusion. That's tension. Your identity completely falls apart. Collapse. You feel like you are dying, but that breaking apart is what allows a deeper, more mature self to emerge. Renewal.
So it's the phoenix myth. It's the resurrection. It's the business cycle. It's forest management.
It is the universal grammar of change. And once you see it, you stop being so terrified of the collapse phase. You realize it's just part of the sentence. You can't have the period at the end without all the words that came before it.
There's one more pattern the source mentions that I think is really profound, especially for anyone trying to figure out, who am I? And that's the movement between unity and distinction.
This one is more subtle, but maybe the most important.
The text describes it as a journey. We start in unity, we move to distinction, and then we return to unity.
Think about the life cycle of a human being. When you're an infant, you're in a state of unity. You don't know where you end and your mother begins. You have no self. It's peaceful, but it's totally unconscious.
Right. But you can't stay there.
Yeah.
You have to grow up.
Exactly. So you enter the phase of distinction. You become a teenager, you say no, you rebel, you build an ego. You define yourself by how you are different. Different from your parents, different from the world.
You become an individual.
Yes. And it's necessary, but it's also painful. It's a state of separation. And most of us spend our whole adult lives there fighting for our distinct little patch of ground.
But the perennial truth suggests there is a third stage.
Conscious unity. You don't go back to being a baby. You take that distinct, developed self, and you choose to reconnect with the whole. You realize you are part of a much larger system.
In psychology, that's called integration.
In religion, you might call it enlightenment or salvation.
And in AI.
Well, think about the training process. The raw data is just a blob. That's unity. Then the model starts making distinctions. This is a cat, this is a dog. That's distinction. But the ultimate goal is a model that understands the entire concept of animals so deeply that it can generate new ones that fit perfectly into the whole. Integrated unity.
So, bringing all this back to the listener, why does this matter? This isn't just, mental gymnastics. The source argues that learning this grammar actually changes how you live.
It changes how you listen. I think that's the biggest thing.
It goes back to that magic eye poster analogy. You remember those?
Oh, I was terrible at them. I just stared and stared at the static.
A lot of people were.
Yeah.
You stare at this chaotic pattern of dots, and it just looks like noise. But if you relax your eyes, you look through the image instead of at it, suddenly this 3D dolphin pops out.
That is exactly what perennialism is. The noise is the Twitter fight. The noise is the political debate where everyone is using different jargon.
It's the conflict between your religious aunt and your scientist cousin.
And most of us spend our lives screaming at the noise.
That dot is wrong. That pixel is the wrong color.
But the source is inviting you to just relax your eyes. Stop fighting the packaging. Stop obsessing over the mispronounced words. Look for the structure. Look for the dolphin.
Because once you see the pattern, once you see collapse and renewal happening in your own breakup or optimization happening in your own ethical struggles, you stop feeling so lost. You realize you're just following the grammar.
And you develop a kind of intellectual empathy. You realize that the person across the table, the one who seems to be speaking a completely different language, might actually be sharing a profound truth with you.
They just have a different accent.
Exactly.
So that is our challenge to you for this week. It's really a call to action from the source text itself.
The question is, do you recognize the pattern?
Next time you're in a heated discussion or you read something that just makes you roll your eyes because it sounds too woo-woo or too sterile, just stop. Ask yourself, what is the structure here? Is there a gold watch wrapped in this ugly paper?
And conversely, look at your own beliefs. What is the grammar of what you believe? And can you translate it for someone else?
The universal grammar is there. It's written into the very code of reality. We just have to learn how to read it. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.
Always a pleasure to explore the territory.
We'll see you next time. Keep looking for the patterns.